Welcome to Real Wealth, Real Health, the show that empowers you with insights, information, and inspiration to achieve your version of financial wellness. Learn how to balance living a full life today with planning for the future. This podcast is brought to you by Alpha Investing, a real estate-centric private capital network that provides exclusive investment opportunities to its members. And now, here are your hosts, Ada Piederico and Daniel Coca.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Real Wealth, Real Health. Our guest today is Adrian Grant. Adrian is an entrepreneur with a passion for helping startups to succeed. He's enjoyed a decade-long career that spans product design, engineering, and venture capital, all with a unique ability to balance his expertise in both tech and business. As an entrepreneur, Adrian has built media for AI companies with customers spanning from Pepsi to Post Foods, including ventures that received backings from the likes of Comcast, Samsung, and DreamIt Ventures, amongst others. As an engineer, Adrian has been featured in publications from Forbes and PC Magazine to Black Enterprise and recognized by Apple for his work. Adrian's skills include full-stack hardware development, early-stage venture capital deal sourcing, seed fundraising, and product management and optimization. He has assisted over 100 startups with product design, strategy, and fundraising. These days, as many of us are pursuing our passions in parallel to careers and others are making a career out of their passions, this conversation with Adrian really dives into what it means to embody the multi-hyphenated, ever-evolving, creative, and generative entrepreneur that he is. Whether you are a single source income professional or you identify as a creative, as an investor, you'll be inspired by what Adrian has learned about staying true to himself across industries and across opportunities as he is diving into even more as one of the first Clubhouse creators that is going to be featured in mid-May. In fact, Adrian's ability to be true to himself is the secret to his very impressive success. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Awesome. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Hopefully to provide some value to some listeners and viewers. And excited.
Yeah. So you're going to fall into the category when we do our podcast, we'll have like more technical, economic, like real estate investing episodes. And I do want to touch in on that a little bit with you on the venture capital side. And then we have these episodes that we call them like story episodes and like an entrepreneur's journey. And I think you fall very squarely, I would say, mostly in that category. And you have we were talking about this in our pre-call, this idea of being multi-hyphenated. And so many of us are in this world. And you just really live in that space. You live in that space of flow, in that space of constantly generating, constantly being creative. And in your story, even just looking at your LinkedIn and what you're up to these days is that you seem to follow some kind of an intuitive, creative sense that's always bringing you the next opportunity, and you just seem to go with it, which is not how most of us with a crystallized set of ideas of what life is supposed to be and who we're supposed to be operate. So I really want to touch on that with you today.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. It's funny, it's like as you're describing this person, I'm like, wait, who's Ada Piederico talking about? Like, so like my story in a nutshell is one in which I think it all stems from like having ideas and wanting to put it out there in the world, and being in the fortunate position of coming from a third world country, whole immigrant story, and, having friends and family members and parents that sacrificed so much so that I could work in tech and enjoy my days. And so that privilege and that blessing is something that, keeps me kind of going. That you know, has been the catalyst behind all these arcs and pivots and stuff like that. So yeah, more than happy to dive in. I don't know if I should give my bio or wherever it is you want to start, but this is looking forward to this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great place to start. What I thought about when you just introduced yourself right now is this immigrant story. And from your perspective, having gone through it, because I think I'm right in saying this, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Fark, our partner and CEO, his family is an immigrant family as well. My family is an immigrant family, and Ann's family, our head of underwriting, is an immigrant family as well.
Dan's the lone sheep over there.
And so is Charles. So is Charles' family.
So is Charles. Yeah. Well.
And so yeah, I'm the lone white man at a private equity shop. Never heard of before in history.
Yeah.
You're the diversity hire.
Yeah. He is. He's our token white guy. It's really awesome. But I mean, there's all the statistics and there's all the data and there's like McKinsey and everybody's talking about the value of diversity. And I don't think we set out to do that on purpose at all. It's just you hire the best people, the people that are most aligned, and there is so much alignment. I talk about this all the time. I talk about just like having met them a few years ago, and it's just been like the most perfect, kind of manifested partnership I could ever want. And so much of that has to do with an alignment of values. And like, Adrian, I wonder from your perspective, like coming into a country that is all about opportunity and it's all about like make your own way, but it's not easy for everyone to make their own way. Yeah. Not everybody starts at the same playing field. So, what has been your experience in creating what you've created in your life from that perspective?
Yeah, it's funny as you were just saying that, it kind of brought me back to what you're saying in terms of like being multi-hyphenate. And I'm thinking like, why am I multi-hyphenate? And I think there's something too, and I assume this is all immigrants kind of share the story in the sense of like, you come to like a foreign land and you have to fit, especially America, like you have to fit in. Like, you especially when I first came here, I was around like 7, 8 or whatever the case may be. I'm originally from Jamaica. And, when I came here originally, we spent time in New York and New Jersey and, inner city areas. And I was different because I was a kid from Jamaica. Then parents worked really hard and we moved to the suburbs. And then I was a kid that came from like the inner city. So I was different then. Then of course, going to college where of course, being Black and at a university like New York University, it's not like there's a plethora of folks out there that kind of look like me. And so I feel like that story of like being other and being different is what my assumption, at least this is my story. It kind of feels that like, okay, how do I kind of like showcase who I am, add value to the conversation, knowing that everyone else is going to view me as something that's different. And that ability to kind of adjust to these different kind of contexts in terms of like whether you're talking to whether it's you're different because you come from a different socioeconomic background, you're different because of the color of your skin, or you're different because like I'm passionate about music and tech and things like that. And not everyone, most of my friends are folks like Dan, ex-lawyers, VCs and stuff like that. So my personal passions and interests doesn't align with a bulk of folks, a bunch of folks in my phone. And so I feel like that I don't know, that immigrant, foreign, that ability to adapt in something that it's kind of been like a pro, definitely more so than a con. And I think that's kind of fueled, the ability to kind of be multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, I think that, as you're speaking, what really just like comes through is an acceptance of who you are, where you are, in that, let's call it a socioeconomic system or wherever you are. There's a level of just accepting and knowing yourself that I think is like it's underneath how you show up in the world and what you're willing to do. Like you said, you're like one of very few, maybe the only, a lot of times. And
yeah,
that's a lonely place to be. I mean, how did you motivate or self-motivate or what was going on and like in your mind, even like emotionally to do that? Because I feel like we can position ourselves to be on either side of that polarity, if you want, right? Like, oh, I'm over here, I'm alone, I'm different, or I'm going to jump in, I don't care. What was your, how did you approach that?
Yeah, so this may be the first of many politically incorrect, insensitive things that hopefully will not get me canceled. If it does, please blame Dan for inviting and Adapia for inviting me. These are my personal thoughts. But in the sense, I think what really the first thing that sticks out to me is again, coming here and, I forgot, in elementary school and being teased. Like literally just being teased and bullied from sounding different. My accent was so thick, I got placed in ESL, even though I spoke English, actually the Queen's English, because Jamaica was once a colony of Britain. And yeah, being teased and like, being like made fun of. and then not wanting to have that feeling and wanting to fit in. And, we couldn't have, again, immigrant background, like we weren't buying the fancy clothes, not even fancy, just like even things like a JanSport backpack is like fancy for my family, as we were kind of growing up. And that feeling of wanting to fit in and wanting to, not being the butt of jokes is really, it's what fueled me to like go out and get under the table jobs. My parents weren't going to buy me fancy Nike sneakers and Timberland boots and Tommy Hilfiger. Yes, I'm dating myself. I'm very old, but these were the fashion, actually now maybe in vogue. I don't know. Things are all kind of cyclical, but essentially, my family wasn't going to spend a lot of money to buy these things that a lot of Americans took for granted. And I wanted them because I wanted to fit in and I thought they were cool. And so I had to go get a job. And so, yeah, so I don't even know if that's even possible now to work on. Well, as a kid working on the table now, it seems like you're violating some kind of state or federal law. But many, many moons ago, yeah, I was work jobs under the table. And since the age of, oh gosh, I can't even remember, but I've been working at least one or two jobs since before teenager. And I think that's what you see probably reflected in my LinkedIn profile of like variety of different things and venture firm here and startup here. Is just that hustle mentality and building is, I don't know, it's kind of fueled me. It's like you worked to get money to provide you things that you like. I'm not someone that's beholden to money. I don't necessarily chasing money, but it allows you to get things that you like. And so I don't know, that's really been a catalyst for me in terms of like, yeah, not wanting to be feeling like other, wanting to fit in and figuring out ways to fit in. And that's also what's, enabled me to develop my personality, not necessarily being the tallest person in the room or, the most prettiest person in the room, but like people that could tell jokes and make people laugh, and figuring out ways to incorporate that and be more outgoing as someone that's naturally kind of shy. And, these are all things that, at one point were really, negatives for me and brought me down. And I thought, these are things that, made me less. And then as I got older and, getting out more in the world, I realized there's actually more of a positive than a negative. So.
Yeah, I understand that. When you said the bullying, I remember going to school and I had Nutella sandwiches and kids would make so much fun of me. And I'm just like, you don't even know what you're missing out on. I get to eat chocolate for lunch. And you're eating some kind of ham. I don't know what you're eating. I'm eating my Nutella sandwiches, but it leaves you very much. I recognize that also in myself of like wanting to fit in and how much of ourselves we put aside to do that. Right. And it kind of makes me think too about the career choices that we make. Like we think that is the thing that we have to do. And I know, at least for me, like dating myself as well, like, a child of the 80s and like a teen in the 90s, it's like, what are your job choices right now? Right. Like there weren't that many, or it wasn't as open as it is today. And so you kind of follow these few paths, and then at some point you kind of wake up and you say, hold on a second, I have more choice. I have more opportunity. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. And you start taking this path, which I think, some people are born entrepreneurs and other ones kind of figure it out along the way and then like really carve their own path. And what you said about not being so focused on, on the money, that's like a very common thing to hear, and just following your creativity. And now you're in venture capital. How did you arrive in this world of venture capital so naturally?
Yeah, and so it's funny. So I started my career off in the ed tech space. Then I transitioned over to big media. I was over at Viacom or BET, a subsidiary of Viacom for a while. In the midst of doing this, I'm, nights and weekends tinkering, building a little project. I taught myself how to kind of code. And in the midst of doing that, we built something, got a little bit of traction, and we got a term sheet. Someone wanted to invest in us, a group of angels. But the terms, even as someone that wasn't as educated about the concept as I was, I knew they were a bit heavy-handed. And so we ended up walking away. And this is at a time when, I'm in my, mid to late 20s. I decided to quit my job, work full-time on my startup, and walking away from something. And I was living home, commuting 2 hours back into the city. My peers at this point, some of them are purchasing their first homes, they're getting married, some of them are beginning to become managers. And so it's like, here I am, like in the spot of like, trying to build something. Someone offers the most, it was $250K, I think, for like half the business, right? Which I knew was like, it's a bit much. And so, but you have to keep in mind, for someone like myself, there's no one in my family has never seen a check that size ever, right? And so like to this day, I haven't even told my mom that story because she would just be like, "What? Someone gave you and you said no?" She'd just like flip out, right? But to get to how I got into venture, so as we got that horrible term sheet, we walked away, and I was just like, "It's probably a bad idea, but I need to live with myself." I started looking into venture opportunities and how I could kind of get into the field, and so I saw a bunch of different job applications and stuff like that, and I saw a post for someone looking for a general manager. At this point, this firm, they're in the process of having several companies in the process of going public. And so they were looking for someone that kind of could help build and scale their company, someone had previous startup experience. Keep in mind, my background is like a little bit of software engineering. I built a little prototype of a little tool, worked at BET for a while. So there's nothing there that screamed startup guy, Google, Harvard, Stanford, blue hoodie. There's nothing in that screamed that. But I was like, let me just apply. Why not? What is the worst thing that could happen? And I met with the associates and the partners. And long story short, they're like, hey, we all like you. Clearly, you're unqualified for this position, but if you want, you could come here, join us for like a month as an intern. And I was like, of course, because for me, what I wanted to get out of it was just essentially learning the business, understanding what term sheets are and pro rata and ride-alongs and all these different things that from the outside looking in, I'm just on TechCrunch, and at that point, Mashable was really popular. And so how I got into venture was IA Ventures, which was to this day is some of the greatest folks in venture. They're awesome folks, and I think I can't tell you what they saw that made them want to offer me an internship, which led to me staying there for way more than a month and becoming a full-time employee and learning the business. I can't tell you what they saw or how I got in, but I think it's something too, again, going back to background and being able to figure stuff out and being the odd person out and being able to communicate like, hey, I was very transparent. Like, I don't know, startups or business. And I've only been like full-time employee at these big old tech companies, but like, I'm incredibly passionate about it. And I think that's what they saw in terms of my ability to like build things and network. And like, it's not like I had a pedigree or like I got a warm intro. It was just, yeah, I guess me. And yeah, so again, like, I wish there was like a secret sauce because I get this question, so many folks now. I'm so far along now in my career where I talk with a bunch of college students, folks my age, is trying to transition into venture, and they're always looking for like the secret combination. But like I think from what I've seen and from what I've experienced is that it's really this tech feels really one in which you can really ascertain who's in it for the money, who purely views this as an opportunity to like, I don't know, double, triple, whatever their personal income is, and who are passionate about it. And me personally, I think people that are passionate about it get a little bit further along because MBAs are dime a dozen. You could get Harvard MBAs, Wharton MBAs, whatever the case may be, and fill up your portfolio. I mean your investment team like that. But I feel there's something to be said about folks that are passionate, are able to kind of wiggle their way in, and that's why you see some firms, you'll have folks that have like, I don't know, liberal arts background or coming from music industry, or like folks that are coming from industries that have nothing to do with finance, but able to finagle their way in. And I think that's something to the testament about them being able to communicate their passion. And I've hired people off that too, personally too. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth, I think passion, a lot of time it speaks a lot louder than your resume or your LinkedIn.
So I'll say this on my behalf, and you know this, Adrian. Like, there was a period where I was a young lawyer, wanted to get into early stage companies, and I remember going to this panel at General Assembly, right, in Flatiron, where it was a bunch of ex-lawyers turned venture capitalists telling their story, right? And I thought, awesome, like, here's my path. And then I heard every single person speak, and they went from lawyer at a firm to in-house counsel to general counsel to something happened, and like 25 years later, now I'm in venture capital. And for me, that was the wake up moment, right? Like, you either got to do it or, you're going to be stuck here watching other people do it. Yeah. And that's why I think you and I become such good friends over the years. Like, when I think about this like fearless serial entrepreneur, like, you're one of the people that comes to mind. And so, my question for you is really like, how do you do it so fearlessly, right? Like, what's that mentality like?
Again, this is probably going to sound crazy to a lot of folks, but like I speak so frequently with folks that are at very lucrative jobs, managers at Google, name big tech company here, and their thing is that like they want to do something else, but they can't leave because it was the golden handcuffs, I believe is the expression, right? Like, so, maybe they have a home and like Google or X company or big firm, whatever the case may be, pays them so well. They're not necessarily passionate about the job, but they can't switch over because they're so used to having so much and their bills being paid for and everything else like that. And, my background, I don't want to make it seem like we had it rough. We did not have it rough. I've been fortunate in the unfortunate position of seeing people that had it a lot rougher than we had. But the sense of like, I know what starting from zero is, and I don't have a fear of that. Like, I put it in context like this: the worst neighborhoods I've seen and been to in America, they all have running water. I've never been to a place that didn't have running water. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I'm sure there's places, rural areas, whatever, that doesn't have running water. I'm sure it exists. But all that to say, like, the places where I've been to and I've grown and I've slept and I've been to, that's not the case, right? Or even like electricity being like a constant thing, or even the internet, right? And so that context, which again, like growing up, like it didn't seem like, oh, I'm learning about like, I don't know, I'm learning about having conviction in myself and I'm learning gumption. Like I didn't think of it like that, but like seeing that, like that's what's powered me. Like, okay, worst case scenario, start from working on fails. Okay. Like I would figure out how to get a job someplace, like, and that's what's been fueling and inspiring me, especially given the fact that, yeah, like worst case scenario, this country's, this is going to sound sappy, but like this country really is great, right? Like the opportunities provided for myself and my family members, it is beyond what is provided, it's beyond what's available in elsewhere. And so I know it's cool to say like, oh, this country is great. And obviously just things that can be improved. But like, I'm one of those people who's like, I'll put it like this. So when we first came here, my mom bought this flag, which is going to sound crazy. It said, America, love it or leave it. And like, that was always like her mantra. It's like, this is like the greatest place. Like, yes, my parents came in, they had, some of them had some education, they had to take like, lower paying jobs, whatever the case may be, but like they worked hard, right? Because it provided them opportunities and like to send us, all three of us, to college, which was like, again, very normal thing for America, but in other countries, that's not necessarily the case. And so that context of like seeing less and knowing what zero kind of looks like and being comfortable going back there, that's what kind of inspires me. Cause it's like, oh, startup doesn't work. Like, okay. Like it's not, I don't know. It's not like the night, it's not the end of the day. And so just to put a cap on it, the reason why I started with the whole golden handcuffs thing is that I feel that we're so used to having everything, right? Like our Netflix, our fancy phones and all that kind of stuff like that. And the fear of losing that, I feel, is such a strong motivator for people. And that's why they stay in jobs and career fields that they don't like. And it's that's their life choice. But for someone like myself, it's like I seen my parents both work 2 full-time jobs, right? And like, my friends, a lot of them were from single family homes, and they thought that was the case for me because we would always just be by ourselves, or like one parent would be in. But like I grew up with both parents. It's just that they worked. And so that context is why I have no qualms with putting out their ideas and startups and pitching investors and getting told no to my face a million different times, because it's not the first time I was told no. And it's not going to be the last time. It's not going to stop, my passion and ability to create, because I feel like my parents put in a lot of work so I could get this opportunity. And it'd be a shame for me to spend my days doing something I don't like because they had to do that. So,
and you had a super savvy lawyer who gave you a ton of free legal advice.
that is also true. That is also true. Daniel Coca, Esquire.
But I remember when I joined Alpha, and what I didn't know at the time was how little you and Fark were essentially paying yourselves at that time, because it was still so much of a startup. And you went from your high paying like corporate lawyer job to basically like being paid less than, on an annualized basis, I think minimum wage, which is extremely brave. And I mean, we've obviously like built Alpha up so much in the past few years, but I just wonder if you would want to like speak to that, because you don't often, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you talk to my father, he'll still tell you like, I don't know what my son is thinking, right? Because neither of my parents went to college, and like, my grandparents were the first ones to move here from Italy, and they grew up in a very kind of urban, poor area, and just wasn't an option for either of my parents really. And they stressed education so hard to us, right? And like when I was in 8th grade, I was talking about I'm going to be a lawyer, right? And like, wow. and my younger brother was I'm going to be a doctor, and like now we're a lawyer and a doctor, right? And it's because our parents like really drove us there. And so when I was 27 and started like kind of thinking for myself and said, hey, I'm going to leave this job where I'm making like, mid six figures to start something and basically pay myself nothing indefinitely. Like, it was met with a lot of resistance, internally. And it was a hard thing to get over. But, in my heart, I knew that the things that I valued, whether it just be autonomy or, feeling like I was having a direct impact on the work I was doing, building a team, as opposed to just kind of being a cog in the wheel and playing the game. And, Adrian knows me from, Adrian and I met when I was very much the like,
oh yeah, fancy suits, New York City lawyer. Is great.
Yeah. Great. And now, thank God we're not sharing the video. It's a different world. And for me, the thing I always tell people is that despite all of the uncertainty that existed, I had never been happier in my life. And for me, that's what made all the difference. And like Adrian, we talk about this all the time. Like, he's a huge part of the reason why I made the jump. Like, when I was talking about, should I kind of join with these guys at Alpha? Should I make this move? And like, we kind of sat down and had this conversation. And it's a big part of the reason why I kind of got in your team. And there are no guarantees, right? But if, you don't come from inherited wealth, whatever that may mean to everyone broadly, you either make it yourself, or, you spend a lifetime making money for other people, living a life for other people. And that just like didn't work for me. And maybe that's a generational thing as well. Like, just, a sense of like entitlement. I'm entitled to follow my dreams, but like, I feel that way. And like, sometimes like my parents, like, they didn't feel that way. Right. My dad felt like his job was to have his two jobs, to make money for the family, to do everything he could to make sure both his kids got an education. And that was his life goal. And that allowed me and my brother to actually go out and try to do what we wanted to do. Right. And so, like, to Adrian's point earlier, you always have to look back and like be very aware and respectful of the fact that there are a lot of people who gave up on their own dreams so that, you could do what you do. And that's a really important part of how I frame, really every day.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you shared that. I think we don't like really often share like our stories so much on here. And it's amazing because you and Adrian, obviously, like, your stories intertwine so much because, you were part and parcel of each other's journey. So yeah, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? Is just being able to like find other people like on the path too. And we lose people along the way often, right? If people don't really align or they don't support. And that's like sometimes you can't really get rid of your family if they're not supportive, but you have to like work around it. But then there are other people. Like, I wonder, Adrian, in your experience, like, did you have, as you grew, did you experience people who resisted your success, if you want to call it success, or your growth? And did you like lose people in your life? And how did you deal with that? Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, or a lot of people who go to make a leap, right, the one of the biggest fears is, who are you going to lose when you make that leap?
Yeah, I could definitely share a story about that. It's funny because it's all coming full circle. In NYU, going to New York City, big city, first time on campus, autonomy, whatever the case may be, I went nuts, absolutely nuts. Dorm parties, then we escalated to like renting out places. This is pre-Airbnb, and like throwing parties and stuff like that. So it was great. We were making money, having fun, parties, et cetera, et cetera. Almost flunked out of college. Right. And so you can imagine, again, immigrant parents and them getting a letter saying, wait, we're paying tens of thousands of dollars to Sally Mae and you're almost flunking out. Like, it was almost like, they're like, are you suicidal or something? Like, you can't come back here without a degree. Right. And so we put together like a youth group to help ourselves and other, kids to get acclimated, especially at Stern, which is the undergraduate business, the business school at NYU. Help them get acclimated, especially if you're a first generation college student, you're a student of color. There wasn't really initiatives and programming for us kind of bias. And so we created a program. We pitched the university for it. They gave us funding. We weren't a club. We were actually I think it was a dean's initiative. So that was like my first kind of entrepreneurial experience. So we went from throwing parties, almost flunking out, to like winning a bunch of awards, including the highest awards you can win at at NYU. And so I'm getting to answer your question. And so the reason why this stands out to me is that I was just doing it. We were having fun, whatever the case may be, helping kids, getting people internships, bringing in speakers. And a friend sent me a really, he called me up and gave me a really nasty phone call. And I won't go into details, but essentially like after the phone call, I realized like, wow, this person's like jealous of me. And I was like, why would he be jealous? Like, there's nothing I have. Like, I don't have any. It's not like I have money or like any. But it was my first realization that for some people, like even a small thing like a little club where we get together and eat pizza and talk about what it's like on campus. For some people, that's like a big deal. And that was a really big, my first awakening as to, being conscious of like some people may view what it is that you're doing and not necessarily, be a supporter, even though this is someone else, my friend and stuff like that. And the reason this is so eerily funny is that yesterday the organization still around. It's about approaching, I don't know, 18 years or 17 years. Like, don't quote me on that. An institution. That's the longest running thing that I've built that's still standing, and it's generated hundreds, definitely hundreds of college kids, help people get internships, help people get full-time jobs. We've had several marriages come through the program. And so I was just sharing the story with them yesterday, and that you have to be mindful of folks. And even though you may think you may not have stuff going for you, you never know. And even with the recent Clubhouse announcement, Clubhouse picking up this little show idea, like I've seen positive stuff, I've seen negative stuff. And I'm thankful now of that first experience way back when in college and getting that nasty phone call, because it really kind of opened my eyes to kind of like grow a thick skin, because I thought, hey, we're helping people. Why would someone be against that? But you never know. And so I don't know, that's what kind of fueled a lot of me. And I think one of the things that we connected on the pre-call out of here, I mentioned, like, I try not to do a lot of this, like chatting about myself and stuff like that. I don't personally find it interesting to talk about my background and stuff like that. Because what I like to do if you follow me on social media at Adrian Grant, or on Clubhouse at Adrian Grant there too, you notice a lot of stuff I do is like entertain. I like to do like informational and entertaining. I like to bring levity, especially if I'm doing anything on Clubhouse or these like the podcasts I've done and vlogs and stuff. I try to like put a smile on people's faces. And like, that's what I use my platform for. Like, people have asked me, come on and talk about, Adrian, what's your experience like building startups or working in venture, or what was it like working in private equity for that while and pitching VCs? And like, I don't have a desire to talk about that, but if it's something more fun or entertaining or something that we could actually enlighten and lift people up, I'm all about that, because I feel like life is just so short. And I try to use my little mini platforms to kind of put stuff out there, positive vibes and stuff like that. So again, like when Clubhouse first started up, we, a bunch of tech VC people got access to it, obviously, because we're all in the business of knowing what's latest and greatest. And everyone was doing rooms around gross margins and MRR and CAC and, not how things QSBS around like tax loopholes and stuff like that. And, I'd get pinged in and people wanted to chime in, and I could speak about it. I'm educated about it. I've worked in the field. I can speak about it, but I have very little desire for it. I am much more interested in, like, I use Clubhouse to like play music and like interview artists and like talk about creators. Like, I find that a lot more interesting, because the feedback I've already received of people saying like, oh, thank you, they've learned something or they had fun. Like, that to me is way much more a better use of my time than being another pundit talking about big tech and all this other stuff that everyone, I don't know, it's in the zeitgeist. I don't know. Hopefully I'm making sense, but essentially in a nutshell, yeah, it's just being your full self and being cognizant that some folks, even whatever modicum of success you may have, some folks may view that in a negative light. And I don't know, you can't please everyone. So I just try to please who I can, and the other folks that fall by the wayside, it is kind of what it is.
Yeah, it's a great story. And it's a great story because it turns into this like like you're saying, 17 or 18 years now that this, like, you built something that is so long lasting, which is amazing. And it serves other people. And, I feel like there's like two really big things there in what you said, and how I'm perceiving you as who I'm perceiving you to be is really, you're rooted in your genuine self. I'll call it like your authenticity, right? I think that word gets overused, but like, you're so genuine, and you're genuine about everything that you do. That's that multi-hyphenated, like, and those are the boxes we most need to break out of, because we can't just be one box. Like, we can't just be, I call it an acceptable identity. Like, my ego will be like, here's my acceptable identity to my parents. Here's my acceptable identity to like this person or that situation. And like, we're like probably driving ourselves crazy in our heads, instead of just opening up and saying, this is all of me. And in my experience, at least, the more I've done that, the more it's almost like permissive to other people to open up and be a little bit more of themselves. And then all of a sudden it's like, it is generative. There's all this creativity and there's all this, like, you're speaking to each other and you're creating things together, and it just feels more natural and more fun. And there's better results from being able to be like 100% of who you are. And I think you're like, just like a great example of that. Clearly, I mean, you're doing it all.
Well, thank you for that. And it definitely was something that I stumbled upon. I definitely didn't start my career out saying, oh, let me be outspoken about my background. It's funny you're saying, going to school eating Nutella. It reminds me, like, so for me, like, I was going to school eating things like goat and all sorts of different ethnic foods that very pungent. So you could imagine the looks and stares and oohs and ahs I got as people were eating their Lunchables, and here I am with like rice and beans and stuff like that. And so, yeah, but all that said, I think that the eye-opening thing to me in terms of like bringing your whole self, well, one of the things that I kind of stumbled upon is, when I first joined Twitter, like I've, like everyone else here, and probably all listeners, we're always on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a professional, our platform. So I assumed, and I'm a part of tech Twitter, so I assumed, I follow a bunch of VCs, et cetera. So I was like, oh, I should do that too. Like, I should talk about business stuff, share business articles and trends and things of that nature. And then I started looking at I did that for a while. I started looking at my page, my profile. I was like, this is really boring. It's not really interesting. I was like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And like, if people don't follow, or if I don't get any, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to be myself. So I started putting up incredibly graphic and explicit rap lyrics, songs, different memes, things that I would just look. I like to look on my page and laugh. I like to go back on my page and make sure like this is something like I would actually follow. And as I started doing that, like I started noticing like people I was trying to, maybe investors I was trying to pitch, maybe it was potential partners I was trying to partner up with, like people would start following me. And I was like, how is this possible? Like, it's not like I thought like the thing was to do like content marketing and here's 10 ways to like pitch investors. I thought that was the angle. And then I just realized that like, I don't know, like, and it's been a boon to me in terms of like me being myself on social media and transferring Twitter to LinkedIn, to Clubhouse, and it's enabled me to get consulting gigs and full-time gigs, and I've met so many different investors in my business off these platforms, and it really enables life to be easier, especially for for myself as a Black person. The whole thing around context switching, which is that the way Black people speak to other Black people, the way Black people in the workforce, much less if you're an entrepreneur, a Black entrepreneur pitching a VC, there's so many different nuances and things you have to be mindful of. And the thing that I have done, and I'm trying to do even better of, is just be myself, because my day-to-day is spent, sometimes I'm talking to VCs, now I'm talking to creators, now I'm talking to like artists and things like that, because some of the Clubhouse stuff we've been working on been going really, really kind of well. And I try to just be myself, so I'm not trying to like be like some super person here or some crazy person over here. It just makes life a lot easier. And obviously there's drawbacks to that. Maybe not every, if you're in a career field where they're expecting you to be buttoned up and you come in with some crazy beard and crazy hairstyle, I won't look at who or point fingers as to who I'm referring to. That may be, that you may not be welcomed in certain places. But I think one of the beauties of working in tech and in ventures that I feel it's a bit, at least from my experience, it is a bit like welcoming in the sense of like, if you're different or if you're other. I mean, I think it feels a little bit more open than other places. And that's not to say that tech is inclusive or diversity and inclusion isn't an issue in tech. It certainly is. And that's not to say that, folks of diverse backgrounds are getting the same venture dollars as others, because that's not the case. But I feel like, at least my personal experience has been being myself and communicating that to potential investors and partners, and have folks fall off, and the folks that gravitate towards you, just makes it more meaningful to conversations, because like they know it's you and it's not like a polished up version of me. It's just who I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everything you do also comes off very genuine, in a way that a lot of people try to come off that way. But like when I think about like the things that you and I have done together, like dinners we've gone to, events, like you're always like, hey, let me loop you into this mentoring thing at WeWork. Come in and do some office hours for some startups, right? Come meet me at this drinks for this venture group. And hey, meet these like 3 guys in their 20s who are thinking about different things. And like, maybe you can intro them to someone. And it's never, self-serving, or it was never self-serving. It was never, hey, I'm trying to, network my way to some place. It's always like, let me help everyone around you. I think that's one of the things that, I've always like admired about you. And so, yeah, man, kudos to you. We're excited to have you on here to talk more about it.
Yeah, it's just a mentor of mine. once said, and this goes back to like how I got into venture. He gave me some really good feedback that I take with me every day. And he's essentially told me that my job, my role, and this is not necessarily in venture specific, but he's just like, in life is just about adding value. Like whatever circle you're in is just about adding value. And then the universe will kind of pay it back in and of itself. And like, again, I'm butchering what he says, but like that, I remember that moment like it was like yesterday. And that's something that's transpired to me. And that's why, mentor at Techstars, mentor for you to different kind of places is just helping folks out. And I feel that, if times got tough, hopefully I have a few folks that have helped that is willing to maybe put in a kind word if I'm looking for a job or whatever the case may kind of be. But yeah, letting the universe take care of itself and not being so I feel like it's very easy in our world to be transactional. Like it's so that's the easiest thing. It's like, oh, you're trying to do this. Okay, let me make that connection. Or, oh, you want this? It's X amount of dollars for whatever the case may be. And I get it. There's people that do that, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's their life, but that's just not my personality. I don't live like that. Like if it's something I can help with, I'll do it. You know what I mean? I can't tell how many times people's like, oh, you should take a piece of this or how much. I'm like, dude, like that's not how it works. Like if I can help, I'm going to help. You know what I mean? I'm not mother. I'm very, I want to be very careful. I don't come across as like trying to be like Mother Teresa. Like there's way too many positive things. Like I'm also like, I was going to say something negative about myself, but I'm not going to do that either because this is being recorded. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, just being helpful to people. It's not like, you don't need to be like a saint to do that. It's helpful for business, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think our business is one of which it's all about relationships, right? At the end of the day, it's all about relationships. I've seen people raise money based solely off the relationships, not because of their traction, not because of their pedigree, not because of like they hired a rock star team. It's solely based off their relationships, right? And so I've seen people raise capital off that. I've seen acquisitions happen like that. And so I think there's something to be said around, adding value to folks and being helpful and being transparent. If you can't help or you can't do anything, just being outspoken about that. And so, I don't know, for better or for worse, it's gotten me here, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. And because I try to do that and hope other people do that for me too as well. And I'm a big believer in the universe and the creator, and I feel that what you put out there, it's a big reason why I try to evoke positivity as much as I can. It's like I feel like what you put out, you're going to get back, and so I'm not going to be the one that's going to be trying to tear down a startup or a venture firm. And also I try not to participate in stuff like that negative stuff, because I don't think it's conducive to anything. But if there's anything positive or uplifting, I'm all about it, especially if it involves me using my platform.
Yeah, I think that just described how we framed you as genuine. everything you just said. And so I'm going off of that, would love to hear, this is what we always do with all of our guests at the end of the episode, really, is to ask you, what does wealth mean to you?
Wealth is being able to do what you want to do and have fun doing it. And then I'd be like, I feel wealthy now, but I don't feel wealthy now. I feel like that's definitely a part of it, the ability to kind of do what you kind of want, which I'm very thankful and appreciative. And I wake up every day and I thank my creator for that, because, again, I don't come from people with those means, but I feel like wealth obviously is ability to, now that I'm speaking it, now I think I have a good answer for you. I think wealth is not only being able to kind of live a life that you would like, but provide for others similar opportunities. And I think that's why maybe I wouldn't classify myself as being the cliche, because I don't have the means yet to, I would love to be able to invest in other people. I'd love to be able to invest in other people's businesses. And I have all sorts of different creative ideas that hopefully you'll see on Clubhouse and a few other different platforms. But I feel like that's how I would define wealth. And that's what keeps me up and motivated, is to get to a point where not only I can continue to do these creative kind of pursuits and business endeavors, but help others, you know what I mean? And financially help others. Because, I feel like that's just a big component. It's not just waking up and liking what you do, but it's also like having the financial means to like, oh yeah, that is a great idea. You should do that. Or, oh yeah, that even though maybe you have golden handcuffs now, here's maybe some little bit of capital so you can switch over and work on that social impact thing that you've been tinkering on, or whatever the case may kind of be. And so that's how I define it. But I also feel too, like, I'm sorry for being long-winded, but wealth, I feel like, and I know it's a very American thing, we want to, fame and wealth, and these are things that we kind of strive for and attain for. But like personally, I don't know, that stuff doesn't really motivate me in terms of like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till I get my first 10 million. Like those thoughts never really cross my mind. It's more about like, I don't know, it's just, having fun and, meeting folks like Dan and you out of P and like making connections and going through life, and you never know what may happen. Again, like this program we put together in our dorm room, as a way to figure out not to flunk out. I never thought it would be here 15 plus years later, and people would, getting jobs, and like there's judges now that came through the program, and investment bankers, right? And like now that's like our little mini network, right? Like I never thought that. And I think that that little seed, fun, ironically, the name of the organization is called Seed, but that seed I take with me in all these different things, was just like, just plant them, right? And just spread these things out, see where it kind of grows, and not necessarily in pursuit of a certain, like, bottom line or bank account statement, even though that would be nice, but more so in pursuit of like being able to continue to be creative and help others be creative and help push the world forward and society forward. And yeah, that's what I feel like. What else are we here for besides that?
Well, the world is so grateful for you, for being here, for like just being who you are and doing what you do. It's so refreshing to hear, and it's encouraging. And I'm really glad that you take that stance of focusing your attention on what is that which you want, right? Because if we're always focusing on what I don't want or what's negative, then that's where our focus goes, instead of focusing on like, how can I have more of what feels good, of what brings me joy, of what is of service, and that will grow, just like you said, like the seed. So thank you so much for being with us today, for everything. This has been a really fun and inspiring conversation, and I know a lot of people they're going to be uplifted. Like I really feel that, because like I feel uplifted after this conversation.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And if there's anyone listening that would love to reach out to me, let me know. It's Adrian at adriangrant.org. So that's ADRIAN at adriangrant.org. And this is, thanks again for such kind words out of here. And it's funny, like this, you just remind me of exactly why I don't like doing this, because like spending so much time talking about myself is very weird. You know what I mean? Like I'm someone that, I'm naturally confident, so I don't need to feel anymore. And like just tell myself, this feels very like humble braggy, which just feels very like you. But I hope it helps other folks out there. And if I could be of help, if anyone's, so I actively, deal source, work with a variety of different firms, including the fund.vc, awesome folks based in the city. So if you're a startup or entrepreneur looking to raise capital, especially if you're at the pre-seed stage, definitely kind of reach out to me. And yeah, if I don't know, if any ways else I could help, let me know at Adrian Grant on Twitter. And if I can help, I'll let you know. And if I can't, I'll let you know even faster.
And on Clubhouse, because you have a show there. You're one of the first batch of original programming. So when you were talking about Clubhouse, for people who are listening, that's what Adrian was referring to. It was just announced a couple of days ago, so early May.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, Clubhouse are doing, it's almost like how like the TV networks will do like their fall lineup or whatever the case may be. This is their first instance of doing like original programming. And so yeah, we're doing this show called The Lobby, which is a game show, AI driven trivia type of thing. To be honest with you, I don't know the particulars of it. I did not create it. I did not produce it. It's something that created itself. And so I'm looking forward to sharing it with the world. It's something that I'm pretty sure no one has ever seen on social media, much less a social audio platform. And what I was saying was, in terms of the Clubhouse, the name of the show is called The Lobby. I'm pretty sure it's the first time it's ever been done in terms of like how we're thinking about our AI and gaming. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is that it could go either two ways. It's either going to be massively unsuccessful or massively successful. And so I'm looking forward to sharing it with the world and seeing where it goes.
Well, I'm really excited to follow along and share in the success, no matter how it goes. So thanks again so much, Adrian. And I look forward to staying connected on all these platforms. So it's such a pleasure to have you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Real Wealth, Real Health. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode and found it both informative and insightful. We welcome all your questions and your feedback about today's episode, and especially we welcome your questions about specific topics that you would like us to cover. So shoot us an email at podcast@alphai.com. And if you have a moment, we really appreciate ratings and reviews, as it helps us grow our online community and our interactions with you. And we'll also be linking to a number of relevant articles on topics that we might have touched on during our conversations. Some of them are broad, some of them are technical, but we're always aiming to provide information that helps you better understand the mechanics of building this healthy financial foundation, especially if you're looking to do this with real estate.